You think you can wear whatever you want, Mum. That shirt belongs to my wife. And then he slapped me. Yes, my own son. The boy I carried in my belly for 9 months. The one I stayed up all night with when he had a fever. The one I skipped breakfast for just to make him a packed lunch for school. He hit me. Over a shirt. If that shocks you, please stay until the end. Because the shirt was just the excuse. What came to light after that night will chill you to the bone. My name is Eleanor Grace Walker. I am 75 years old, and today I am done staying silent. If you believe no one deserves to be mistreated, especially a mother, hit that subscribe button. And if you have ever been hurt by someone you love, I invite you to stay with me through this whole video. Because this is not just a story about pain, it is a story about strength. I live in a small house on the outskirts of Nashville, Tennessee. After a hip replacement surgery 3 years ago, I moved in with my son, Derek, and his wife, Amanda. It was supposed to be for a few weeks, but a few weeks turned into years. At first, it was warm and welcoming. Amanda brought me soup. Derek helped me to the porch to sit in the sun. They said they were happy to have me, but slowly things changed. Their bedroom door was always locked. They whispered when I walked into the room. Amanda stopped eating dinner with me. Derek avoided eye contact. I blamed myself. Maybe I stayed too long. Maybe I was just old-fashioned. But deep down, I knew. I was no longer a guest. I had become a burden. Still, I stayed quiet. I did the laundry. I washed the dishes. I watched their dog when they went on vacation. I tried to be helpful, to earn my place, until one Tuesday night, everything fell apart because of a shirt, or rather what it stood for. It was just a plain white blouse hanging in the laundry room. I thought it was mine. It looked exactly like the one I usually wore to church in the spring. Soft fabric, rounded neckline, 3/4 sleeves, simple but elegant. The kind of blouse an older woman like me could wear and feel neat without drawing attention. I put it on without thinking much of it. I was even planning to wash it again so it would smell fresher. I just wanted to wear something light and clean while I walked around the little flower garden in front of the house. Amanda came home first. She stared at me like I was wearing her wedding dress, eyes wide open, cold. "Are you wearing my shirt?" she asked, each word like ice. I had not even had time to answer when the back door slammed open. Derek came in. His face was flushed red, his forehead wrinkled with anger, his fists were clenched. Did you go through our stuff, Mum? What makes you think you have the right to touch my wife's clothes?" I stammered. "No, I did not. It was in the laundry room. I thought it was mine." Without hesitation, Derek knocked the steaming cup of tea out of my hand. The glass shattered on the floor, hot liquid splashing across the wooden boards. Then he shoved my shoulder hard, and I stumbled back, my back slamming into the kitchen counter like hitting solid rock. I did not scream. I did not cry. Just a single choked gasp escaped my throat as the pain surged through my hip, the same hip that had been operated on not so long ago. Amanda stood frozen, not a single step forward, not a word of concern. She just folded her arms and said calmly, "Maybe it is time for you to move out. We cannot take care of you forever." Take care of me? I was the one cooking dinner every night. I was the one doing laundry for both of them. I paid for the electricity and gas with my own retirement money. I quietly looked after their dog whenever they traveled. I was not a burden. I was a cover. They used my weakness. They mistook my silence for consent. They turned my presence into the excuse for everything that was wrong in their marriage. That night, Amanda called my sister in Florida, saying I was becoming paranoid, wearing the wrong clothes, mumbling nonsense. They were crafting a new narrative, one where I was the senile old woman who no longer knew what she was doing. Derek called our family doctor, telling him I was repeating myself, showing signs of dementia. I heard it all. I did not react. I just went to my room, sat down, and started writing. Because I knew they did not just want to kick me out of their house, they wanted to erase my truth, to take away my right to exist with dignity. And from that moment on, I knew I would not let them succeed. In the days that followed, they set trap after trap. Amanda left the medicine cabinet open on purpose, then accused me of stealing her sleeping pills. Derek told the neighbors I wandered at night and could not find my way home. Everything felt staged. I endured it all quietly. I kept cooking, kept cleaning, acted like nothing had changed. But inside me, a battle had begun. Every night, I used my old phone to take pictures of the bruises on my arms. I recorded their conversations when they thought I was asleep. I saved everything on a tiny USB drive tucked inside the Bible on my nightstand. I started to feel like a ghost in the house I once called home. Cold meals, avoided glances, accidental brushes in the hallway that felt like strangers passing. But in that coldness, I began to feel clearer than I had in years. I was no longer just a mother being pushed to the edge. I was quietly rising, collecting every piece of evidence, not for revenge, but to reclaim my voice, my dignity, and my truth. One night, as I was washing dishes, I overheard Amanda whispering to Derek in the living room, "She is losing it. If she signs over her accounts, we can say she was not in her right mind." I froze. The soapy water running down my fingers felt like ice. The very next day, Derek handed me a stack of papers, saying I needed to sign to update some insurance details, but at the bottom, I saw the tiny print, "Authorization to transfer retirement benefits." I looked at my son for a long time. He gave me a weak smile. "You trust me, right, Mom?" I nodded, but I did not sign. I folded the papers, put them away in the drawer, and that night I quietly called my lawyer. I met my lawyer, Clara, for the first time at a small cafe near downtown Nashville. She was younger than I expected, just a little over 40, but her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and filled with quiet anger on my behalf as she listened to what I told her. I handed her the USB drive. She opened her laptop and reviewed every audio clip, every photo, every grainy video I had recorded from the corner of the kitchen cabinet. "We can do more than you think," she said. "But you must stay calm. Do not act out. Do not let them know you have started to fight back." I nodded. I was no longer the frail old mother. I was a woman resetting the stage of her life. I began documenting everything day by day. When Amanda yelled at me for dropping a spoon, when Derek slammed his fist on the table because I asked about the electric bill, I did not confront them. I lowered my head. But I remembered everything. I even pretended to be confused. One time, I deliberately put a knife in the wrong drawer, just to make Amanda believe their plan was working. The more confident they became, the more evidence I gathered. One day, Amanda told Derek, "If we get her into a nursing home, we can transfer the house without anyone checking." I recorded it. I reached out to a distant cousin in another state, a software engineer, and asked him to back up and encrypt all the files in the cloud. I knew that one day, what I was collecting would become my lifeline. I also started talking to the neighbors. I had conversations with Vera, a widowed woman who lived next door. I asked her to be a witness if anything strange ever happened. She took my hand and said, "I have seen Derek yell at you 3 times. I will tell the truth." And then, one day, Derek handed me legal papers requesting guardianship. They were trying to prove I was mentally unfit to manage my own affairs. If they succeeded, all my retirement money and the house would be theirs. I was not afraid. I simply said, "Then let my lawyer take a look." They froze. Amanda went pale. Derek stared at me as if I had become someone else entirely. They had no idea that for the past 3 months, I had been quietly preparing for this very moment. The day I would no longer be the victim, but the plaintiff. The day I would no longer cry in the dark, but step into the light with the truth in hand. That day was coming, and I, Eleanor Grace Walker, was ready. I started recording myself, short monologues in my bedroom, retelling everything like a video diary. I talked to the camera like it was my best friend, and with every word, I felt a little more of my voice return, a little more of the person I thought I had lost. I also started reading legal books, not to argue, but to understand the rights I had as an elderly citizen in this country. I took notes, highlighted sections, underlined every law that protected seniors from psychological and financial abuse. Then I reached out to a non-profit organization that helps elderly victims of domestic abuse. I asked for guidance and resources. They not only gave me information about what I could do, they also connected me with a senior counselor who had gone through something similar. We spoke once a week. She told me, "You are not alone. You are speaking up for thousands of people like us." That was the moment I realized this was no longer just my fight. It was a response for everyone who had ever been dismissed because of their age, ignored because of their silence, or underestimated because someone thought we were too old to fight back. I cleaned up my room, packed my belongings into separate labeled boxes, not to leave, but to prepare to leave them, on my terms, with dignity and order. Each night, I still pretended to go to bed early. But after 11 p.m., once both of them were asleep, I would open my laptop and read Clara's emails. Every line of the plan we were building, step by step, not rushed, but steady. One Monday morning, I walked into the kitchen and heard Amanda on the phone. She was speaking loudly. "Just 2 more weeks. If the guardianship is approved, we can sell the house." I smiled softly, not because it was funny, but because I knew they were counting down in the wrong direction. They thought I was weak, but they did not realize I was a storm waiting to rise, and that day was getting closer than ever. Since the day I started quietly fighting back, every step I took had a purpose. I was not only collecting evidence of Derek and Amanda's mistreatment, I was also gathering testimonies from the people around us. Every Thursday afternoon, I visited Vera. We sipped chamomile tea, and I shared pieces of the truth with her. She did not just listen, she took notes, and she was willing to sign a formal statement. Vera used to work at the courthouse, so she understood the legal system well. She became an ally I never expected. I also talked to the mailman, Mr. Thomas, who had witnessed Derek yelling outside the house more than once. All I needed was one line of confirmation, one sympathetic look, and I had another witness. One Saturday morning, while Amanda was out and Derek was fixing the faucet in the garage, I quietly opened their small safe in the closet. Amanda had once accidentally revealed the code. Inside were copies of bank documents and a revised house deed, with the beneficiary's name altered by hand. I did not take anything. I just took photos, carefully, quietly, leaving no trace. This information, once in Clara's hands, was like puzzle pieces falling into place. They were not just trying to push me out. They wanted to take everything I had and erase me from their lives as if I had never existed. I remember one night, heavy rain poured down. I sat by the window, listening to the drops hitting the roof. The house was cold and quiet, and I wondered, how could my own child treat me this way? But then I thought, if I let the pain consume me, I would not be able to do what needed to be done. I could not let grief defeat me before justice had its say. I looked up and stared into my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman who was no longer crying, but quietly standing strong, waiting for the day to reclaim the truth. And exactly 1 week later, I received notice. The lawsuit had officially been accepted by the court. Clara called me that same evening. "It is time, Eleanor. Be ready. You are the one leading this now." I nodded, even as the tears streamed down uncontrollably. Not because I was weak, but because I knew, after all the quiet suffering, I finally had the right to speak, the right to stand tall, look them in the eye, and say, I know everything, and I am done staying silent. On the day of the trial, I arrived early, wearing the deep blue dress David, my late husband, had given me for our 40th wedding anniversary. I walked into that courtroom, not just as a mother or a grandmother, but as a citizen, reclaiming her right to live with dignity. Derek and Amanda were already there, sitting beside a young lawyer they had hired from a budget firm. They looked at me. There was no smirk, no mockery, only tension. Maybe they still thought I had come just to vent, but they did not know that I had brought more than just my voice. I had brought the truth. Clara, my attorney, began with a thick file. She presented the court with every piece of evidence: photos of my bruises, audio recordings of threats, copies of altered financial documents, and a video of Amanda screaming at me in the kitchen. Unaware a camera was recording, Derek's side immediately tried to dismiss it all. It is a misunderstanding. My mother has memory issues. She fell on her own. But when Clara played the clip of Derek shouting, "You should know your place in this house," and Amanda coldly saying, if she just died, everything would be easier, the entire courtroom fell silent. I did not have to say a word. The truth spoke for me. Vera stepped forward to testify. Then Mr. Thomas, the mailman. Then the counselor from the elder abuse nonprofit. One after another, they confirmed I was clear-headed, kind, and being treated like I did not exist. Clara ended our case with a sentence that made the entire room hold its breath. Your Honor, my client is not seeking revenge. She only wants recognition that she is not crazy, not worthless, and does not deserve to be hit for accidentally wearing the wrong shirt. The judge, a woman in her 60s, nodded slowly, visibly holding back emotion. Then she turned to Derek. You did not just betray your duty as a son, you broke the law. Then came the ruling. Amanda was permanently stripped of her nursing license. Derek was sentenced to community service, financial restitution, and a restraining order prohibiting him from contacting me for 5 years. I heard it all without shedding a single tear. Not because it did not hurt, but because I had waited for that moment for so long, there was nothing left to cry. Amanda kept her head down. Derek tried to approach me after the hearing, but Clara stepped in front of him and calmly said, "Not anymore." I walked out of that courtroom and took a deep breath. The sky was bright, but I felt like I had just stepped out of a dark tunnel after years in the shadows. I did not need a grand victory. I just needed to be heard. And that day, for the first time in many years, I was. After the trial, I returned to the temporary apartment arranged by the senior support organization. Just a small 2-bedroom space, but every corner was filled with light and relief. I sat by the window in my armchair, brewed a pot of ginger tea, and for the first time in years, I no longer heard slamming doors, stomping footsteps, or bitter sighs every time I passed by. I thought that would be the end. But it turned out the truth was not finished with Derek and Amanda. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Clara. Her voice was urgent yet composed. "Eleanor, something new has come up, and you should know." She told me that a young reporter named Rachel from the local paper had attended the hearing by chance. Deeply moved by the story, Rachel decided to write a feature on elder abuse in America. My story was published under the headline, "Slapped for Wearing the Wrong Shirt. A 75-year-old mother outsmarts her abusers and silences the courtroom." The article spread quickly on social media, gaining thousands of shares. I started receiving letters from everywhere, from abandoned mothers, elderly people who had their savings stolen by relatives, and even young people apologizing for once being dismissive toward their grandparents. I never imagined my truth would become the spark that woke others up. And then came the real consequences for Derek and Amanda. not from me, but from the community. Amanda, whose past record included an old case of elder abuse at a former job, a case that resurfaced after the article, was investigated again and formally charged with 2 additional counts. She not only lost her job, but now faced potential probation. As for Derek, the man who once screamed at his mother in front of neighbors, his co-workers turned their backs on him. His company terminated his contract. The church council, where he once played in the worship band, sent a letter revoking his role. He did not just lose money, he lost his reputation, his trust, and his standing. But the most satisfying part for me was not their punishment. It was how people began to see people like me differently. Older people, without youthful strength, but still full of wisdom and determination. I never retaliated. I simply stepped into the light, and the truth did the rest. I received a handwritten letter from a woman in Wisconsin who wrote that her own daughter had tricked her into signing away her home. "I used to be too ashamed to tell anyone," she wrote, "but thanks to you, I found the courage to speak up." I cried as I read those words, not from pity, but because I no longer felt alone. Somehow my pain had turned into someone else's strength. The story traveled farther than I ever imagined. A television station invited me for a live interview. I refused several times, but eventually I agreed, not for fame, but to say something I had been too embarrassed to admit for years, that abuse is not always a punch. Sometimes it is silence, a cold stare, being treated like an unwanted object in the very house you helped build. The interview lasted 10 minutes, but the impact was enormous. I received over 200 emails that same night. Among them was one from someone who had gone to high school with Derek. He wrote, "I used to think Derek was the perfect man, but now I realize we stayed silent about the signs for too long." And then, in a slow but steady turn of events, Derek was sued. This time by a non-profit organization, after being caught misusing donation funds through a fake charity event. Amanda was forced to sell her car to pay part of the restitution owed to a former patient. In a recent hearing, she broke down crying and issued a public apology. Not to me, but to the court, to the public. It did not sound sincere, but that did not matter. I did not need her apology to heal. I already had everything I needed: the truth, justice, and peace. One morning, as I was tending to my orchids on the balcony, I received a text from Clara. "Congratulations, Eleanor. Your case has been added to the internal training materials at the National Institute of Law." I smiled, gently brushing a white petal in bloom. Itas, a 75-year-old grandmother once slapped over a shirt, had now become a symbol of resilience in the fight for justice. And I knew this journey was never just about getting justice for myself. It was to remind the world that older people are still human. We still have limits, and we still have the right to rise when we are hurt. I thought everything was over, but fate, or perhaps karma, seemed to have written a separate ending for Derek. 3 months after the trial, I received a phone call from Clara's office. "Eleanor, are you sitting down?" I took a seat in my old wooden chair by the window, calm in my chest. Clara told me that Derek was now under federal investigation for his involvement in a money laundering scheme tied to fraudulent charity donations. He had acted as a middleman for a shell organization, and one of those funds, he had used my name openly to gain trust from the community and major donors. I went numb, not from shock, from pain. Derek had not only hit me with his hands, he had struck my name, my dignity, the very identity I once proudly signed on every birthday card I ever wrote him. But then I exhaled, deeply, slowly, because this time I did not have to do anything. The law would do what was right. Just weeks later, headlines flooded the front pages. Derek Walker, son in viral elder abuse case, arrested in large-scale financial fraud investigation. News outlets across the country picked it up. Those who once defended him turned away. A major charity organization cancelled every campaign linked to his name. They issued a statement: "We do not tolerate exploitation of public trust." Derek was placed under house arrest pending the investigation. His accounts were frozen. He lost access to every dollar he had ever raised under my name. I heard his lawyer even refuse to continue representing him after discovering fabricated documents submitted to the IRS. And Amanda, after the divorce, she moved back in with her elderly parents in Iowa. A sad irony. The woman who once mocked the old now depended on them. Neighbors say she rarely leaves the house and is often seen crying quietly in the backyard. I felt no joy, no sense of triumph, just a simple truth. You reap what you sow. Cruelty always comes with a price, not through revenge, but through the consequences people bring upon themselves. Once I found a letter sent to my old address from Derek. Inside was a single line: "If you feel hurt, then I understand now." No apology, no explanation, just that. I folded it and placed it inside a small box under my pillow, not to forgive, but to keep, as final proof that even the coldest heart in the end recognizes its own wrong. I did not reply. I did not need to, because I knew justice had already been served, and this time I did not need to say a word. These days, I live alone in a small third-floor apartment where the mornings are bathed in sunlight and the evenings feel as peaceful as a meditation song. I grow orchids, take care of a tabby cat named Lucky, and I teach free creative writing classes for seniors at the local library. I no longer carry resentment. I do not need to forget, but I have learned to let go. Derek is my son, but now he belongs to the past. And as for the present, I choose peace. Sometimes I write in my journal, simple poems, little stories about kindness. I do not write to publish. I write to heal. And I want to tell you, if you have ever been hurt, if you have ever suffered in silence, remember this: you are not alone. You do not need revenge. Your peace. That is the greatest punishment for those who once brought you to your knees. You are worthy of love, worthy of respect, and above all, worthy of being heard. Have you ever felt like the woman in this story? Betrayed by your own family, hurt in silence, forced to endure on your own. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below. I read every single one. Share this video if you believe older people deserve to be heard, respected, and protected. And if you have been silent for too long, speak up, because your voice matters. Hit like, share, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss another true story. Stories that inspire and stories that heal.